Dear students, dear guests, dear rectors, and dear sustainability delegates, welcome to the 10th Sustainability Week. 10 years ago, it would have been almost impossible to say this last part of my greeting, dear sustainability delegates, because there was only one. But things have changed and structures have changed. Amongst other, thanks to the constant demand of students asking their universities to include sustainable development into the DNA of their universities. But over the last 10 years, not only structures have changed, also the Sustainability Week has evolved with an ever-changing team of students, from a handful of students who organized the first Sustainability Week. You see some impressions of the last years behind me, to around 100 students who engage for this week that organize it this week. So last year we had to move to the digital space, and now this year we do not only go back to how it's been before, also with this rectors discussion or rectors panel as it used to be. I'm happy to welcome all of you today to a new form of discussion. First, we're going to hear 5 keynotes, and then the room will open up for you to ask your questions, to get into the conversations and see how we together transform our institutions. In the last part, we come back to this room and see what we can share and how our disciplines can work together. But now, let me introduce you to Leon Beck. I'm so happy that you co-moderate tonight's event with me. Leon studied at ETH Zurich. He is now an architect and designer who works on specially located and process-related issues. During his time at ETH Zurich, he co-founded the AGN, the working group at the architecture department of ETH. The group aims to further develop questions of the environmental sphere in teaching and research through collaborations at ETH and beyond. Further, he was involved as the Student Sustainability Commission in the fields of food, sustainable finance, and campus development. Now he focuses on climate neutrality in small towns and in rural spaces.
A very warm welcome from my side as well. I'm pleased to be here with you today and to have the honor to co-moderate this panel together with Anita. Anita studied environmental engineering with focus on recycling in Aachen, Germany, and she came here for an exchange semester at ETH in 2020. That's also when she got involved in the Sustainability Week. Next to her engagement for the Sustainability Week, she also coaches student initiatives for the association Netzwerk N. Here in Zurich, she is closely in contact with all the student sustainability commissions and rectors of the 5 universities. Before we introduce them to you, let me quickly mention that there's a film team around taking some pictures. If you don't want to be included, just contact them directly. And now I hand over to Anita to introduce you to our first guest and his vision of a sustainable university in 10 years.
Yeah. In the preparation for tonight, we asked the speakers that you're now going to see with us on stage to tell us about their vision for and what the university will look like in 10 years. So I'm grateful that after last year's digital version tonight, we are hosted by the University of the Arts. A very warm welcome to Professor Meier. He's a historian and president of the University of the Arts since 2008. In 10 years, people work and study creativity, knowledge, and production in harmony with the environment and sustainable action. Compared to today, he says, the uni and its campus experience a fundamental shift in teaching and the understanding of its own work. This will require a change in values, tools, and knowledge. This is the path to which the University of the Arts is embarking now. Please, Mr. Meier, join us on stage and pick one of the posters that will support you on this journey. You can stay with us on stage until, yeah. No.
With an excellent education for sustainable development, the Zurich University for Teacher Education enables its students and employees to participate in the sustainable development of society and to make a substantial contribution for overcoming societal challenges. I'm pleased that we have Dr. Heinz Rhyn with us today to talk about this development of society and the universities itself within the next 10 years. Professor Rhyn is Director of the Zurich University of Teacher Education, Vice President of Swiss Universities, and Board Member of Education Suisse. Please welcome him on stage to choose a slogan or tool from those posters of the last 10 years as an impression for the challenges to come.
So we still have some place left here on stage. Tonight, Professor Hilty is going to represent the University of Zurich. The vision of the UZH with regard to sustainable development is described in its sustainability policy and its implementation strategy 2030. It will be a university where all disciplines critically reflect on their paradigms. It is possible that some of these paradigms have contributed to the global crisis that we are facing today. At UZH, it will be normal to do research in inter- and transdisciplinary groups, and to participate in public discourse where this is needed to get closer to sustainability. Teaching at UZH will cover all the competences that students need to take responsibility for a sustainable future. And UZH will reach climate neutrality in 2030. I'm pleased to welcome Professor Hilty, who is professor at the Department of Informatics and heads the Informatics and Sustainable Research Group. He also serves as a Sustainability Delegate of UZH. And you already know what to do. I'm curious to hear how this will help you to reflect on the paradigms.
We have as well Professor Hilber with us as Head of Sustainable Development at the Zurich University of Applied Sciences and as a Dean of the School of Life Sciences and Facility Management. He is a member of the University Management Board as well. A microbiologist by training, Hilber believes that sustainable development is a principle to be lived through fully and that it is based upon active participation and dialogue. In 10 years, Hilber hopes to see a university whose campuses are transformed into a real laboratory for applied sustainable solutions, generating value and impact for society as a whole. He believes that this can be achieved by building a community of researchers, lecturers, and students cutting across schools and disciplines. And he is also convinced that an optimistic and joyful spirit is required at the ZHAW and beyond. Professor Hilber, please join us on stage and pick a poster.
Last but not least, now we have all the cantonal unis on stage, but you all know there's one missing in Zurich. So in 10 years' time, ETH sees itself still leading the ranking on sustainability of Swiss higher education institutions published by WWF. This will be achieved by continued engagement for sustainable development in teaching, research, and on campus. Especially attractive teaching and study offers outside of the curriculum shall contribute to meet the aspirations. Same as ZHdK, ETH aims at becoming climate neutral by 2030. I'm pleased to introduce you to Professor Günther Dissertori. As a physicist, Professor Dissertori has worked at the CERN in Geneva. He took up the role as rector of ETH this February and is thus responsible for teaching. It's a pleasure to have you with us for the first time at the rector's discussion. Please join us on stage and pick a poster that motivates you to include sustainable development in all parts of teaching.
To reach the target set, a lot of developments are needed within the universities and beyond. How these might look like and what is needed to accelerate the cultural change within the institutions, you will might hear now. So please, Professor Hilber, Professor Meier, the floor is yours to continue.
So, does this work? Yeah, it seems to work. Thank you for introducing me and giving me the floor. I have to be honest with you, I found it extremely hard to focus on writing a keynote for tonight, even if it's the shortest keynote I've ever had. It's 5 minutes, I think. But in view of what is happening globally at the moment, I really found it hard to focus on this. What we're experiencing at the moment is a horrid onslaught, not only on people, but on everything we understand by social and economical sustainability. What will happen ecologically, we have no idea. At the moment, it's disastrous, but we will have to see what this decoupling of the West from Russian gas and oil will bring in the future. Does Germany go back to coal? Doesn't it? We just have no idea. And I picked this poster for aesthetics reasons and also because it looks like a quote from Putin at the moment. But I still will tell you what we're doing at ZHdK in the field of sustainability. We are convinced that the arts and design can make an important contribution to this change that is absolutely needed at the moment. Our people are agents of growing awareness, agents of more effective communication, agents of designing sustainable products and services. So our first goal is to anchor sustainability in all our disciplines. It's not obvious for everyone. It's not as obvious in music as it is in design at the moment. But here, maybe the pandemic helps us a little because music is a very international business with a lot of flights being done by famous musicians. And this business has become much more locally in the last 2 or 3 years. And it will be interesting to see, will this remain or will we just go back to international? So it's important to anchor it in all the disciplines we're having. We're dedicated on educating sustainability in all our disciplines. We are committed to preparing our students and faculty to these topics, to introduce these topics, to mainstream them in everything they do in teaching and research. And we're committed to running a sustainable campus with a very strict decarbonization road agenda we're pursuing at the moment. So how do we want to achieve that? In the title it says, how can I accelerate? It's not that easy to accelerate, but the acceleration has already begun. And we started building structures that will allow us to accelerate this development. I've already said something about operational sustainability. We're quite far there. We're going to be climate neutral quite soon. We start with, I know it's debatable, with a compensation portfolio, which we'll then abolish in times to come, but it helps us to start. We have formed, how should I translate that into English? It's called Dossier, Sustainability Dossier, which is something like a pro-rectorate in sustainability about a year ago, if I'm correct, because the head is here, and he nods, so it's about a year ago. In this pro-rectorate, all departments are represented, students are represented. It serves as it advises university board and management, it advises the departments on sustainability goals. And within that pro-rectorate, there is an operational unit which is called Resource Sustainability in the Arts. And this resource unit comprehensively develops concrete teaching, research, transfer, and educational offers. It cooperates with external organizations. It organizes events, has its own website where all the events are being published broadly, and it makes us visible in what we do in this field of sustainability. We're planning a new study program, study model at ZHdK, which is called Major Minor. It's sort of banal for universities. They have Haupt- and Nebenfächer, have had them for a long time. We didn't, so we're introducing that. Within that new study offer, we'll have minor courses focusing on sustainability, which can be then elected by students. We have in our student organization Verso a Sustainability Committee, which is very active and sometimes, I cannot say diplomatically, kicks our ass to do more. And that's helpful. A lot of developments have been sort of initiated by students at this university. I think it has changed a bit. We have learned quite quickly as an institution, but students' engagement was really important to start the whole process. So, and in all departments, we have projects on sustainability now. If I compare it to maybe 1 or 2 or even 10 years ago, it's tremendous what has been developed over the past few years. And we're committed to continue to be very actively involved in the Zurich Knowledge Center for Sustainable Development, which has been formed a few months ago with all universities in Zurich. And it's extremely promising. This cooperation will strongly support us in our institutional change. That's about what we're planning to do and what we're already doing now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Meier. I would love to start the discussion with you right ahead. But first, we continue with the keynote by Professor Rhyn. Let us hear how the University of Teacher Education designs education, schools, and classes for the sustainable development of our society. Professor Rhyn, the stage is yours.
So, dear students, dear colleagues, I apologize for my voice, but it's just a cold, I assure you. As a University of Teacher Education, education is in the core of our duty, and educating is caring. That's why I took this to care is caring, and education is quite similar. And for me, it's very important to say that it's not just a duty of the rector of the university to accelerate, we work in teams. So it's the university management together. If I want to do something alone, it's just me. So I have to bring in all my colleagues on the management, and then all the staff and the people who work with us. So that's a very important question for me, that we have to work together on these goals. We need to continuing go for it in the sustainable development. The Zurich University of Teacher Education is a university that designs education, schools and classes for the sustainable development of society. That means also we have the program in the schools, Lehrplan 21, the program 21. That's very important for us. And there we have a key anchor for our work. And that's really very important, because we are, in a sense, helping to form the society of the future and to bring to the pupils, to young persons, the opportunity to think critically, to have his own minds, and to have the possibility to have own opinions. And at the end, it's a question of democracy and open society. As a University of Education, we are dealing with professions. The Zurich University of Teacher Education assumes responsibility for overcoming social challenges and for the transformation towards a sustainable society. We have different measures taken. One, it's key for us. We got a new strategy in this year for the next 4 years. And in this strategy, the goals are formulated for sustainable development. The strategy is part of our work in the years 2022 to 2025. And we are for sure orientated also at the SDGs, the 17 Goals for Sustainable Development of the United Nations, and we have several key goals which we can really deal with them. We managed recently adopted its new strategy. Sustainable development is one of the focal points. In addition, we are currently defining sustainability goals for our university in concrete. The focus is on promoting education for sustainable development, designing a sustainable university, and supporting sustainability networks. And for us, the networks are very important in our university, inside, but also outside. And we have, in our management, we created a framework for implementation of those goals in individuals and in different areas. We managed in supporting by the commissions. We have 2 key commissions. The Health and Environment Commission. This commission addresses issues of sustainability in operation and on campus. The activities of the Commission were particularly highlighted in the recently published rating of the WWF, the World Wide Fund for Nature, and as all universities in Zurich, we get really good ratings. We got a second commission, the Commission for Diversity and Gender. That's also in a social sense for us very important concerning the sustainability. This commission supports the university management in whole in recognizing the differences in their members and in promoting equal opportunities for their employees. And finally, I guess for accelerating sustainable development, it is important to have a knowledge management. That's why we gave a mandate, especially for this knowledge management in the domain of sustainable development, to a person who keeps all the different aspects, activities, and innovations concerning ST together. As you may perhaps see, the university management of the University of Teacher Education is committed to a sustainable Zurich teacher education, and I try, of course, I will do my best to keep it on this way. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this inspiring input, the insights into the University of Teacher Education, and the look at the society as well. I now want to hand over to Professor Hilty of the ZHAW.
Yes, thank you very much. Anita has already included some points of our implementation strategy for sustainability in 2030 in her introduction, so I can focus on 2 or 3 points that are a bit more specific and that also are connected to that poster I chose. First of all, I think that the important things that happen at the university also for sustainability must happen in the heads of the people, of the students, of the colleagues, and so on. If we say, well, yes, we need a cultural change, this is a bit dangerous in my view, because it is easy to say we need a cultural change, but it's not so easy to say from where to where, and not everybody has the same idea of what is a desirable cultural change. But I think that it is in any case, it's important that we start to critically reflect also about the basic assumptions, the basic paradigms and theories we have in many of our disciplines, like the paradigm of economic growth in economics, just as an example, and that we keep a little bit more distance to what we are taking for granted every day. I think sustainable development has a lot to do with not keeping things for granted just because we always have been taking them for granted. And I think in this respect, what it really is required for sustainability, this is sufficiency. So a culture of sufficiency would be needed. You can't prescribe that, but you can just recognize that it is really something important, because if we always continue to expand whatever can be expanded, and this is the opposite of sufficiency, then we will not arrive at sustainability. So we need the attitude of seeking enough, even when more is possible, and this means sufficiency. And we need to give the people who live this attitude respect and social recognition. And if there is anything needed that could be called cultural change, I think it would be this. We created some really small things, small steps towards that direction. For example, we created a platform for voluntary self-commitments in the field of sustainability, with a focus on teaching, on research, on air travel, and on food. But you can also add other things, other self-commitments in other fields. And we have now 70 self-commitments there, which is not much for a university with roughly 30,000 people, if we include everyone. So, but at least it's a platform, it's a first step. Then there are other measures that may be more effective because they are not voluntary. For example, the measure to reduce air travel. During the pandemic, we saved 5,900 tons of CO2 per year, just because of the pandemic, just because people reduced their flight activities to roughly 25%. So and this amounts then to the enormous number of 5,900 tons that were not emitted due to less flying due to pandemic. And now the university board, executive board, decided that the level of flight emissions can only go back to 60% of the pre-pandemic average, and will from there have to be reduced by 3% every year until at least 2030, which then means that we are below, that we have more than a 50% reduction in 2030. Another specific topic I want to mention is the ZKSD, the Zurich Knowledge Center for Sustainable Development, which has been founded by the four cantonal universities of Zurich. It has been mentioned before, and it is not far from here at Hartstraße 235. And this is a platform for projects that really connect universities and disciplines, and maybe also different academic cultures. And I think this is a good thing. The start was a little bit slow due to pandemic. There will be, I may mention maybe two projects that are important at the moment. One is just, has not yet really started. It is called Pathways to Sufficiency. And this Pathways to Sufficiency project is seeking for methods to really reflect and communicate about sufficiency in new ways. And if you have any, it is very participatory. So if you have interest in taking part in this project, just send me an email. It's a little bit too early to talk about this project, but since I'm here now, I have to mention this. And another important project is Sustainable Food Systems in Africa, or a whole project line, actually. Matthias Huss, who is in charge of this project line, is also here and can talk to interested students. Okay, so that was my input for the moment. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Professor Hilty, for this informative and especially critical speech. Next, I want to ask Professor Hilber to the stage and share with us how at the University of Applied Sciences you take action.
I chose this leaflet here because it's the first one where we have all the logos on it. And what came to me as well is that it talks about heroes. And I think you all here in this, I think it's loud enough. You all here, you are really the heroes because you are here. And I remember a couple of years ago, we had the rector from ETH, and she was furious about the students because your number was not high enough. So thank you that you are here tonight. The recent IPCC report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, states, I cite, it is unequivocal that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean and land. And the climate change has already disrupted human and natural systems. I personally see it as my team's and my role that our stakeholders say that is unequivocal that ZHAW has taken concrete action to make sustainable development a fundamental part of its everyday life, from campus buildings to social interactions on campus, resulting in a positive impact. This is not an easy task, as you can imagine. At the ZHAW, we have many challenges, especially the collection of data upon sustainable development. This challenge is hindering us from publishing a sustainable report before spring 23. A good report is an important starting point. It's a baseline in establishing a fact and evidence-based dialogue about sustainable development at our university, and how this issue can be reasonably and effectively tackled for a sustainable transformation. At the ZHAW, we are already now taking actions, as all the other universities, concrete steps to make our to change our mobility behavior, energy consumption, and use of resources more sustainably through our Green Impact Book and its measures. This, however, requires both traditional and innovative approaches to drive forward our university along the path of sustainable development. We currently do this in two different ways. First way, by establishing the right framework conditions at ZHAW to encourage more sustainable behavior. I give you an example. We are working on travel regulations, for example. And the second route we follow is applying our own research on our own campus as a real and living laboratory for sustainable development. I give you an example here as well. There is a project funded by the Swiss National Science Foundation, which is called Novanimal. And this has to do with the mensas and the food we serve in those mensas, and how we can encourage our students and faculty to eat more sustainably. Both examples outline the fundamental importance of behavioral change, which in my mind has less to do with availability of technological solutions, and more it has to go with the question of culture and values. How can we foster the culture and community for sustainable development in our universities? That's really the question. At the ZHAW, we believe that engagement of as many employees and of as many students as possible, and together is the key word, this is central. Therefore, we have launched a Sustainable Impact Program. This is our flagship initiative at ZHAW for sustainable development. Within this program, we want to enable engagement by supporting and networking interdisciplinary study projects, so that's concerning the students, teaching and research projects, that's for the employees and faculty, and we have the entrepreneurial impact branch across all our schools and in collaboration with other universities too. In doing so, we aim to find motivated and engaged multipliers. These are our ambassadors at the ZHAW, and all the guys sitting in this room from ZHAW, I count to these ambassadors. And we try to leverage to help us in our work and for accelerating sustainable development impact and transformation in all sectors and dimensions across our university. because sustainable development is not just ZHAW or our sustainability office, it's all of us together. Because of that, we are very proud also that we are able to be part and be engaged on the CKSD, the Zurich Knowledge Center for Sustainability. We consider this as a big success of the last year. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot for pointing out those challenges you're facing and the tension between knowledge and behavior, which is obviously there. At last, I want to invite Günther Dissertori to the stage to talk about the situation at ETH.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure being here, and I also would like to thank a lot for the invitation. And I take the liberty to actually start with 3 side remarks that are weakly linked to each other. The first one is the following. I had a look, since it's the first time that I come to this event, this kind of event, I had a look at the recording of last year's event, which was an online event, and so I looked at the recording, and I saw that towards the end of the event, the participants were asked to make a promise for this year, since it would be the 10th anniversary. And so there were various promises made. I think one of you promised that you would come up with the sustainability report of your institution, if I remember well. And then my colleague and predecessor, former rector Sarah Springman, she promised that she would send a great new rector. And when I saw this, of course, it made me very nervous because it puts enormous pressure on me. Then a second remark, thinking of Sarah, and then in the beginning, when looking at the stage and looking at my respected colleagues, and including myself, I realized that we have a little diversity problem here. 5 white men, I don't dare to say 5 old white men. And the third comment is also related to an old white man, and here I connect to what Professor Meier said, because this specific old white man also has a big impact right now, what is going on. And it brings me to the following consideration, that there has been the question, where do you see your institution in 10 years from now? And what we saw, or what we learned in these last 2 years, or even in this last week, is that of course one can make great plans, great predictions, and then from one day to the other, the world is completely different. And I think we always have to keep this in mind, meaning that we always have to stay mentally flexible. This does not mean, now, having difficulty making predictions, and we know that making predictions is difficult, especially about the future, it does not mean that we should not make plans and set clear targets. We should not stop doing that. And ETH has done so. We have set a clear target, and actually it's a milestone. It's not an end station. And we have set this milestone building basically on the enormous efforts that ETH has already invested in this topic in the last 10 years or more, actually more, in research, in education, on campus. And as we have heard it also, the efforts have been evidenced also by the rankings that you might have seen. Now, what is this milestone? Like the University of Zurich, we have set this clear goal of climate neutrality, net zero by 2030. Why do I say it's a milestone? Because it is clear that reaching this target will only be possible by including compensations there. So it cannot be the end. So it means first we reach this target, and then beyond 2030 to 2050, we hope that with further also technological changes, improvements, one can come to the ultimate goal, namely no additional compensations. Now, the important thing is this should not just stay empty words or great words or nice words, but this definition of this target has been the result of a very concerted effort. For example, there has been a white paper about this specific net zero target developed with the effort of including all the relevant stakeholders, including the students. And the students have made great contributions, definitely, to defining these targets. And the Schulleitung, the executive board of ETH, only very recently has clearly committed to this target. This means that from now on, the executive board has to consider long-term implications in all our decisions, I mean, be it strategic, be it infrastructure, be it investments, and so on. So it's quite a commitment. At the same time, it is clear, and we heard it also nicely beforehand, such a thing can only work if, together with, as we heard about the research, education, and so on, it comes with a cultural change. And this cultural change, I think, was also already discussed or mentioned in past events here. Now, talking about cultural change, how we can move towards such a change, I see several levels here, and at an institutional level, but also at kind of at the educational level. And let me start with education. And what for me is important is not only talk about the cultural change inside our institutions, but we need it in society. Because if it's not happening in society, it will not have an impact in the end. So the question is, what is our biggest contribution to society? How can we have the biggest impact on society? It's via the students. It's via our graduates. Therefore, this is what I see as our greatest mission in education. I have this mental picture that we have to provide a backpack, a rucksack, backpack full of relevant competences to our future graduates. These competences are of technical nature, so they bring knowledge to society, but it also includes kind of extracurricular competences, wider competences, and it includes awareness, and includes this new culture. Because with our graduates going to the society, there we have the real lever on. And this is where we have to work on. And that's also why a lot of the efforts in terms of sustainability at ETH go into providing this large set of competences. You might have heard about examples in the past. I repeat a few. For example, there's this talent project, ETH Talent, which means really providing a large offer of, for example, courses, events, and so on, that allow the students to acquire this rich set of competences. An example, a very recent example, is the Student Project House, where this is a lecture-free zone where people can come in, start their own ideas, try their own ideas, fail forward. And in this area also projects are born related to sustainability. The ETH Week is a very prominent example, and topics of the ETH Week where for 1 week several hundred students very concertedly work on a big societal problem and try to find solutions. And topics have been sustainability related. I cannot tell you right now, I'm not allowed to tell you what is the topic of this year, but it will be of similar nature. And a final part of this educational aspect, which is very important to me, is the following. We also have to watch that our study programs actually have enough room and space for acquiring these competences. Often there's a tendency, definitely at ETH, I don't know how it is the situation in the institution of my colleagues, to completely pack our study programs with kind of the technical competence as it was used in the past, and there's in the end no free time for the students to choose new topics or to try out different things, to go, for example, to a course series that we have on sustainable development goals and so on. So we really have to look at that. Otherwise, it does not make sense talking about competences, and in the end, the students find out there is no time to do this kind of things. Okay, so definitely we will, and I will push my colleagues on this, that whenever we have a curriculum reform or new curriculum, that we watch this kind of space and time for these activities. Finally, at the international and institutional level, since a couple of years by now, there's a big organizational project going on at ETH. It's called Rethink, with ETH in the name, Rethink. And there are many aspects to this project. A lot has to do with organization. ETH has grown enormously, maybe unsustainably over the last 10, 15 years. And one has to take stock and look, is our organization, are our processes still the kind of appropriate for where we are now? But one thread in this big project is actually about culture. It's about our values, about our culture. So also at this level, we try to kind of work on this cultural change. It's not something that happens from one day to the other. Finally, going to the future, you have to set clear targets, but you don't know what's happening on the way. Similarly, we all know that with these big goals that we have, there are also challenges that are already clear now, like conflicting goals, right? We heard about travel, international travel. At the same time, we want to make sure that we foster the careers of our graduates, of our colleagues. Fostering careers means, in our context, strong internationality. This is one example of conflicting goals, and there are others. Again, knowing that there are conflicting goals does not mean that we should stop moving towards our targets. We just have to keep then this mental flexibility and see how we can address these conflicting targets. And then, again, you have these great targets, and the next day comes a war, and the world looks different, and you have to adapt again, but not stop walking, not stop walking. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dissertori, not only for your well preparation for tonight, looking at last year's video, but also from taking us from the insights of ETH to what we actually do when we go out, what the aim is. And now we will also go out. We will not go out into society and start talking to everybody right now. Maybe that's a format for next year. Who knows? That's going to be for the next generation of students of the Sustainability Week. But at least we're going to go out to the tables to start the discussions straight ahead. So I had to look at the time. We'll shorten the discussion time a bit, but we still have around half an hour where you can exchange with your rectors and sustainability delegates directly. We have the Student Sustainability Commissions present here, who have been working on all the topics you've heard before for quite some time. So you're going to find a table with the logo of every university. You are free to change the group and listen and join another discussion. And at around 8 o'clock, Leon and I are going to ask you back to the room here. So please don't run away. There's also going to be an apéro waiting for you afterwards. So yeah, let's join the discussion.